Hi, this is Aimee
and Melissa. We are a couple of retired Texas teachers who are CALTs, certified academic language therapists. We've started our own businesses, and now we have a podcast called
The Dyslexia Duo. Join us for our podcast where we will delve into dyslexia from the unique perspective of a parent. We'll guide you through everything you need to know, from the first signs to the intricacies of dyslexia curriculum placement.
This season, we will cover the referral process, how the Texas process has changed, what to expect when your child is dyslexic, and how to support them.
Come join us, starting now. Okay, hi there. Welcome. This is Aimee and
Melissa.
And we're the Dyslexia Duo.
Welcome back. This is episode 2 of the Dyslexia Duo podcast. I am Melissa.
And Aimee.
And when we left off, we had just read the dyslexia definition as identified by the IDA Board of Directors in November 2002. And I'm going to reread that again just in case you missed it, and then we will break it down for you. Dyslexia is a specific learning disability that is neurobiological in origin. It is characterized by difficulties with accurate and or fluent word recognition and by poor spelling and decoding abilities. These difficulties typically result from a deficit in the phonological component of language that is often unexpected in relation to other cognitive abilities and the provision of effective classroom instruction. Secondary consequences may include problems in reading comprehension and reduced reading experience that can impede growth of vocabulary and background knowledge.
Okay, so let's take that definition and break it down bit by bit because it's a lot to try to chew on. So the very first thing we're going to look at, it says dyslexia is a specific learning disability that is neurobiological in origin. It's not from being sick. It's not the result of a head injury or anything like that. It's
or not reading enough.
Or not reading enough, right? We've heard that before too. It's inherited. It's something that's going on in the brain. It's genetic. It's characterized by difficulty with accurate and or fluent word recognition and by poor spelling and decoding abilities. Okay, so accurate and or fluent word recognition. These are words in isolation. These are words in context. Difficulty with decoding words, difficulty with reading words quickly and accurately. It's the automaticity piece of word recognition. And of course, poor spelling and decoding abilities. When you look at older students that are possibly going to be later identified with dyslexia, most often that identification comes about by their written output. Their teachers are looking at their work and they're like, why are they misspelling everything? Why are these sentences so brief when they have so much more verbally going on? So reading and spelling are the big red flags for that. The next part of the definition says these difficulties typically result from a deficit in the phonological component of language that is often unexpected. So often unexpected. These are kids that are, we know if it wasn't for print, they'd probably be at the head of their class and everything. So it's something that you wouldn't expect. And in fact, so often our kids are being told that they're being lazy and they're not trying hard enough.
They're really bright kids, though.
Yes, they're very bright kids. Relation to other cognitive abilities and the provision of effective classroom instruction. So these are kids that have been in school. These are also, let's be honest, these are kids that may have not been in school too. Whatever the traditional pattern of schooling is for our kids, we can't blame COVID on and saying we're going to wait for COVID effects to wear off and put off identification. We have to start looking at what the rest of his peer group is doing in the way of an identification, right? Effective classroom instruction and secondary consequences could include problems in reading comprehension. So if you think about it, our dyslexic students are not reading as much as their traditional peers. So they're not able to make those connections either with vocabulary or text to text, text to self, text to world connections. And that can impede the growth of vocabulary and their background knowledge because they don't have those connections.
Right. They're not exposed to nearly as much vocabulary because they're not reading as much.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times I kind of also interpret them as almost as if they're learning a foreign language, even though they know how to speak our language and they know what the words mean when they're just listening oral language. But when they are reading the words, they might not know that that word was flip, for example, until they're taught how to sound out that word. And then they're like, oh, I know what flip means.
Yeah.
So when they're reading a book and they now know how to read the word flip, it totally changes the meaning of the sentence that they were reading.
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you, Aimee, can we talk a little bit more about the phonological component?
So what is phonological awareness? It's that sound manipulation. It's when you talk about phonological awareness is something you can do with your eyes closed. It's not reading. It's not being attached to print, right? So it's that manipulation of sound, whether you're manipulating words and sentences, whether you're manipulating syllables, compound words, or individual phonemes. So a phoneme is a sound unit in a word, okay? But that is a big marker for looking at dyslexia. In fact, it's one of the early identifications for later reading success with our young children. Can they do phonological awareness activities? Beyond rhyming, right? Can they segment the words in the sentence? So if I had the sentence, candy is sweet, can they tell me that there's 3 words in that? Or are they going to tell me it's 4 words because candy, they think it's 2 syllables, it's 2 words. Do they have that concept of words? Do they have that concept of syllables? Do they have that concept of individual phonemes? That's what we're looking at with some of that.
Can they delete the sounds and words? Can they say candy without the can? Can they just say D?
Yes, that is really hard for a lot of our kiddos.
So those are some good things to watch out for when you're wondering if you're a parent and you're wondering if your kids have dyslexia. Those are some of the tips that we can think of to tell you.
There's a lot of things that you can look for with your students. So the biggest red flag I can think of when I'm doing looking for dyslexic tendencies is a family history. Because it is neurobiological in origin, typically it's a genetic thing. And so we're going to see it occur in families because we have some traits that are common to dyslexia. Like with traits that are common to dyslexia for a generalization could be difficulty reading words in isolation, difficulty accurately decoding unfamiliar words, difficulty with oral reading. It's slow, inaccurate, or labored without prosody. So prosody is a smooth, even intonation. It's reading context like you speak it, right? And difficulty with spelling. And you could see some of this because dyslexia exists on a spectrum. You could see some of these traits in your students. You could see none of these traits in your students. There's other things you can look at. When you talk about traits common to dyslexia in reading and spelling, it's that phonemic awareness piece that we were just talking about, segmenting, blending, and manipulating sounds and words, learning the names of letters and their associated sounds. They don't have that sound symbol.
That's a big one.
Yeah, it's huge. It really is. Holding information about sounds and words in memory, which is their phonological memory, that short-term memory. So the best way I can describe phonological memory, if you remember before we had iPhones and cell phones, when somebody told you a phone number, you had to rehearse it. 5642, 5642, 5642. That's that short-term memory rehearsal until you could get a piece of paper and then you forget it, right? Well, when you decode words, you have to hold those sounds in short-term memory in order to read the word aloud, okay? Additionally, rapidly recalling the names of familiar objects, colors, or letters of the alphabet, which is that rapid naming piece. So if they can't rapidly read the sight word, or they can't rapidly read words that are decodable, that could be a consequence as well. But of course, all of these are going to impact aspects of reading comprehension. It's going to have limited vocabulary growth because of reduced reading experiences and variable difficulty with the written language. And I get all of this from the Texas Dyslexia Handbook, y'all. If you're in Texas, this is one of your best resources for finding out things about dyslexia in public and charter schools.
Sometimes parents don't realize that they have a family history because they did not have a problem with reading. However, the grandparents of the child might have had a hard time with reading, but they did not know that they had dyslexia. Mm-hmm. They just knew they had a hard time with reading. Mm-hmm. They weren't identifying dyslexia when or great-grandparents were going through school. Mm-hmm. So not as easily anyway. Mm-hmm. So that is something to keep in mind.
Yes, absolutely. I can think of, we have dyslexia in my family tree. My grandmother, she dropped out of school in 3rd grade, but she was very gifted seamstress. Looking back now, I just used to think it was an entertaining story of how stubborn my mama was. But now that I know more, I'm like, may have been some dyslexia going on, because I know that I have relatives that have either been identified with dyslexia or had some dyslexic traits. So let's define a little bit more about the neurobiological. It means it happens in the brain. Okay. It's nothing that they did. It's not vision based. Let's talk about that. So often I hear parents saying, oh, the words are moving around. They aren't seeing it. They're not staying on the page. That could be a thing, but that's not what dyslexia is, because dyslexia is not a vision-based disability. It's neurobiological, and it's not vision-based. And in fact, back in the late 1800s, a lot of identification was being seen with difficulty with reading, and they would bring their kids to the eye doctor. Mm-hmm. And the eye doctor would say, well, they seem to be seeing okay, so there must be some other reason for this. And they determined eventually that it had something to do with what's going on in the brain. And in fact, if you ever hear about O.G. Orton Gillingham, so the O in O.G. is Samuel Orton, who is a neurophysicist, I believe, and he was working with a little girl, because he worked with stroke victims. Mm. And so he was working with a little girl who sort of was resembling what a stroke victim goes through when they lose the ability to read. But she hadn't had a stroke. The parents brought her to him, and she didn't have a stroke, and he didn't know what to make of it. So he said it must be something that's going on in the brain. He called it streptosymbolia, which means twisted symbols. And so he worked together with Anna Gillingham and, of course, Bessie Stillman. They all developed a multisensory program to help work with the two hemispheres of the brain. And originally, dyslexia therapy was to be delivered in a one-on-one setting, which wouldn't that be nice? But yes. That's not necessarily how things are nowadays. So it's not vision-based. We don't want to fall victim to products out there that promises to fix the vision, whether it's prism glasses. I've heard that one before too. Uh-huh. Essential oils, that doesn't do it. It makes your room smell nice, but it doesn't do anything for dyslexia. You don't want to use the colored overlays unless they really truly do have something like scotopic sensitivity syndrome. But keep in mind, if they've been tested for that, which there could be comorbidities with dyslexia, it's not the cause of dyslexia, right? So if they have something like they've gone through the Erlen method, it's a particular color with a particular hue and shade that works for everybody in a different way. I can't just slap a colored overlay on my kids' writing and say, oh, this is going to help them a lot. Additionally, specialized fonts, and you can go on the International Dyslexia Association's page, it does not help students with dyslexia. I mean, it's kind of cool looking, but if that's a conscious decision that's being made, I see these books being touted all the time for dyslexics, and I go, ooh, is it decodable text? No, it just has the dyslexia font. So that's not a thing that really helps our students with accurate word reading and fluency.
Vision therapy is one that some of my students actually go to help with their tracking.
Right.
They have trouble with eye tracking. It's not designed to help them improve with their word reading either. It does help them stay focused on a line, though. It teaches their brain and their eyes to work together to stay on one line.
Right.
So you could see how it would improve reading.
Right.
But it's not improving reading
Accuracy.
due to dyslexia and the phonological component of dyslexia that is the deficit.
Right. Absolutely. We have to be wary of what my other grandma would call shysters, that snake oil. There is no quick fix. They're businessmen. Make no mistake. They're businessmen and they're out to get your money. So you got to be wary of some of those quick fixes.
And that's why we're here to tell you about all of these things, because we understand that there's a lot of people out there that want to get your money, that want to prey on the fact that you as a parent would need help for your child, and you want to do anything you can to help your child. And those people do want to make money, and they want to utilize their opportunities.
So what does work for our dyslexic kids?
Well,
Is dyslexia cured?
Dyslexia cannot be cured, Aimee.
Right. That's right, Melissa.
What does work is a systematic program that is delivered sequentially. It's explicit. And we're going to talk more about those in details too throughout our different podcasts. But it is a very thorough introduction to each letter in sound, grapheme and sound, so that the child can learn the way that their brain needs to learn, to reorganize the way the language comes in so that it can be placed in the proper place in the brain. There actually is studies that show that with the proper therapy, that the child's brain can actually be rewired to look like that of a non-disabled reader. They actually did functional MRIs.
Yeah, if you read the works of Sally Shaywitz, in her book, Overcoming Dyslexia, she provides actual brain scans, images of the students before intervention and the students after intervention, and it starts to resemble that of the brain of one who is non-dyslexic, a traditional reading brain. I mean, there's still some misfirings in some places, but it starts to become more efficient with processing those symbols.
Let's talk a little bit about how dyslexia hardly is alone. It usually has a friend.
It brings a friend along for the ride.
Yeah.
So
there are kids that have dyslexia only, but a lot of them have ADHD. They can have speech difficulties. What are some of their things, Aimee?
Oh my goodness. There could be dysgraphia.
Yes.
You could have some anxiety. Definitely as they age, they'll become very anxious, because when I started to see this shift in my kids, not my personal kids, but my students, it would be end of 4th grade, beginning of 5th grade, because they kind of become more aware of who they are and how they're presented to others. And they'll become aware that they do things a little differently. So they'll get some anxiety over reading in front of people. They don't feel like they read well in front of people. There might be some depression, because our kids are average to above average intelligence, and they're smart, and they know they're not performing like their traditional peers, right? And so that can cause some depression issues with them. There can be some dysgraphia. That's difficulty with the actual formation of letters. I do think it's kind of interesting that it's not necessarily a small motor skill, but dysgraphia has to do with the inability to get the written work on the paper.
Yes.
Right? And though I've seen artists that are dysgraphic. They have that fine motor skill in place, but they can't get the written word on paper. And it goes beyond the spelling. It's all about letter formation.
Yes, I've seen some of my dyslexic students work so hard at trying to write something, and you will see all kinds of eraser marks. You'll see dark lines. You'll see misformations of letters.
Holes in the paper.
Yes, yes. And they struggle so badly with the spacing of the letters as well.
Mm-hmm.
Dyscalculia.
Yep, that difficulty with math. That shouldn't be surprising because math is a language also. So dyslexia is difficulty with language. Dyscalculia is a difficulty with the math language.
So, Aimee, I was thinking probably one of the biggest comorbid condition I have noticed with dyslexic kids is ADHD.
Yes.
Do you feel like that too?
One of the things I've noticed is that when you have that comorbidity, whether it's hyperactivity or inattentiveness, it's really going to impact their working memory. What you see with your student when they're in a dyslexia therapy is that remediation at the word level starts to occur first. Because think about it, when you read, those words stay on. Like I have my script in front. You wouldn't know we're working from a script, but I have the script in front of us as to what we're going to say. I can see these words. I can sound these words out. I can rehearse them over and over until I get the word correct, right? With spelling, which is where I see a lot of the working memory come into play, especially with written expression. But with spelling, they have to hear the word, say the word, unblend the word, attach all the rules for each phoneme in that word, remember what the spelling for that is, get that shape on the paper, and then check their work to make sure. I guarantee by the time they get to check your work, they've probably forgotten what the word is and they've moved on because it's a lot of work for our dyslexic students. Times 2 if there's a difficulty with attention.
Yes. The executive function is the umbrella of the working memory, flexible thinking, self-control, like all of that kind of plays a part. And if you have difficulty with working memory, more than likely you would probably have difficulty with your executive function. And
absolutely.
That is a whole nother.
That's a whole nother podcast.
We do need to get into that.
Yeah.
Because that is a very important thing to share with parents or teachers to help them know about what these kids go through and how it would feel as a student in the classroom having these difficulties and what they as a teacher or a parent could do to help their student feel better about themselves.
Have you ever done one of those dyslexia simulations?
I have.
So I think that is so worthwhile. If you haven't gone through a dyslexia simulation, encourage your campus, your district, whatever, to put one on. There are simulation kits you can get from IDA and from Dr. Kelly Salmon Hurley, I think, as well. It really kind of shows you what the student with dyslexia goes through. It does even some working memory with distractions in the background. I've been a participant and I've been the person who has put on the simulation before. And I know that my participants, when they came out of it, they were like, I had no idea how hard it was. And that was just, 30, 45 minutes that they had to do it.
And that wasn't really doing all the things that our students have to do.
Absolutely not.
Just a little glimpse as to what might be difficult for them.
So we've been talking a little bit about working memory and executive functioning and the comorbidities that go into dyslexia. And we only have so much time that we can spend with you per podcast, per our producer. So we're going to talk to you about some references that you can go to. I mean, we're going to continue to make podcasts, so don't think, they're done with episode 2. They're never coming back. But let's give you some books to hang on to so that you can further your knowledge. So one of my favorite ones to refer teachers to refer parents to, it's easy to read and it is all-encompassing, is by Sally and Bennett Shaywitz. It's Overcoming Dyslexia. Get the second edition because it was updated in 2020. I have the first edition and the second edition, and I keep the first edition because she signed my first edition. Ooh. I was pregnant with one kid, I just don't know who, and I'm keeping that forever. And she even spelled my name right, which is another miracle in itself. But it is great reading. It explores everything. It talks about the fMRIs. It talks about the difficulty that some of our kids have with written language, but with speaking and pulling up the incorrect words and how dyslexia can impact every part of their life.
Dr. Pam Dawson wrote a wonderful book, Smart But Scattered, and this is where she really delves into the working memory components that affect our students, and it is a wonderful read. I went to one of her continuing education classes, and it really opened my eyes. So I recommend that. It really helps those people that have kids with ADHD and possibly executive functioning difficulties, which a lot of times those kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, awesome. So another really great text that I refer to parents more so than teachers is the Dyslexia Empowerment Plan by Ben Foss. And it on the title of the cover itself, it says, "A Blueprint for Renewing Your Child's Confidence and Love of Learning," because their dyslexia will shake their self-esteem.
Oh, yeah.
So you want to figure out how to put that love of life back into them if they're being impacted by their difficulties with dyslexia.
I love that. That is a huge driver in my day-to-day practice, is building self-esteem.
Yes.
Moving on to good books to read for children. One that I found recently that I absolutely adore is Your Fantastic Elastic Brain.
Love that.
It is a wonderful book to read to children about the way that they're in control of how their brain develops. It explains the brain in a way that kids can understand. It works to help the kids learn about neuroplasticity and helps them have that ability to be able to learn that they can grow their brain. And I love that book. The kids actually love learning about it too. And it really gives them that opportunity to own their own learning.
Yeah. One of the ones that we did in training, I've been training teachers to therapist level, is, and I had to pull up the title to make sure I had it right, Brilliant Bee, A Story for Kids with Dyslexia and Learning Differences. And it's this little girl who, she's pretty confident, but she's struggling with reading. And her parents and her family and her friends go out of their way to tell her what things she does that's so much better than what they do to build up her self-confidence. So it's a great little story. And then another one, if you're looking for something for older kids, y'all know the Percy Jackson series. Their lead in that is dyslexic. Percy Jackson is dyslexic.
Oh.
So yeah, that's a big player with those secondary kids. So if you're doing something like Learning Ally, or you're reading to your secondary children, or you're doing, we used to say books on tape. It makes me sound really old because nobody's doing a book on tape any longer. But if you do Audible or any of that, get the Percy Jackson series. They're way into those.
That's great. And then, of course, Thank You, Mr. Falker.
Yes.
By Patricia Polacco.
Yes.
One of my absolute favorites. She signed my book.
She signed mine.
I feel like I'm really, really special.
I know. We just fangirl over the weirdest things. Yes. I know.
That one is wonderful because she acknowledges all the help that her teacher, Mr. Falker, gave her throughout her schooling. She struggled so badly to learn.
And one more that we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about. Hank Zipser.
Oh, yeah.
By Henry Winkler, the whole series. Who, one day, Mr. Winkler, we're going to have you on our podcast.
The Fonz.
The Fonz. A. You know what the A is about?
No.
Okay, because he didn't read a book until he was in his 30s, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we know that it's difficult for children and adults to get their words out sometimes when they're dyslexic. They lose their words. They have to stop and think about what the word is. And so he was in a point in one of the Happy Days episodes, and he couldn't remember his next line. And his holding piece, until he could come up with his line, was, "Hey," like that. And so that catchphrase is a direct result of his dyslexia.
Wow. That is awesome, Amy.
Yeah.
I never even knew that.
I'm a little font of trivia.
Yes, you are. I used to walk around all the time doing that. I felt like a young kid. Hey.
So one day, Mr. Winkler,
we want you
on our show.
Please.
And Patricia Polacco and Ben Foss and all of y'all.
Yes. Then as far as websites, we really recommend the IDA website.
Yes.
They have fact sheets, and that is where you can get little snippets of information related to dyslexia, ADHD, different learning disabilities. It is a wealth of information, and that it can be found at dyslexiaida.org.
Our professional organization, ALTA, if you want to find out more about becoming a dyslexia professional, like a practitioner or a therapist, or even if you're already there, you probably know about the website though, is altaread.org. It tells you about all the different ways you can support ALTA, what ALTA can do for your child, why a therapist and a practitioner is the gold standard for dyslexia education. So check them out.
Yes. And you can also search for a practitioner or a therapist in your area.
Mm-hmm. So we're lucky that we're in Texas because there's a whole lot of us still here in Texas.
Especially the DFW Metroplex.
Especially
Houston.
DFW, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then also FCRR. I know there's some parents out there that do homeschool, and there's some teachers out there that might probably already know about this, but in case they don't, FCRR is the Florida Center for Reading, and they have wonderful ideas of different things that you can do for phonological awareness and different reading skills. So I would recommend checking that out. I believe it's fcrr.org. So check that out.
All right. And then one other I want to talk about, you know how we talked about overcoming dyslexia with the Shaywitzes?
Yes.
Well, they have a place on www.dyslexia.yale.edu.
Oh, yes.
It is the place to go if you're looking for gold standard. It is the place to go. So she has definitions on the page, resources, success stories, the research behind dyslexia, all of it.
It's fascinating, all of the different research she has done and provided for all of us to learn from.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. Shaywitz.
That's right.
So we hope some of these things have helped you get the tips that you might need and learn a little bit more about dyslexia. We are looking forward to telling you more in our upcoming podcast. We want to tell you a little bit about the difference between CALP and a CALT. We want to tell you a little bit more about the actual instruction that we give, break that down a little bit more. And then eventually we want to get back into helping you know about ADHD executive function and how that might affect your child's learning.
Yes, and we'll definitely do some deep dives on some of these topics as well. And if you have a suggestion for us, at this point, we have social media on Facebook, the Dyslexia Duo. Check us out. So go to Facebook, type in Dyslexia Duo. You'll see Melissa and myself on there with our little pink brain logo that we have, and say, hey, I would really like to hear a discussion on this. And we'll research it. And like I said, we're going to pull in some curriculum authors who discuss, their curriculum and what was their inspiration behind it and what they found to be the most challenging with writing it. All the things you want to know.
It's very exciting.
It is. We're so excited to continue to do this.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes. And so until next time, this is Aimee
and Melissa.
We're the Dyslexia Duo.